Hello again. So when we last talked about interviewing the customer, we explained that at the end of the interview, everyone on the team needs to go to a separate room or wherever and actually take the time to process through their notes and write down the important issues that they found. And they are to write down each of these important issues on a separate sticky note. Now, you're likely working remotely. And so when you're working remotely, you're like, I don't have a bunch of sticky notes. And what good would it do for me to write them down on a bunch of yellow 3M sticky note cards? And I agree, it wouldn't do you much good, which is why we have tools like Miro and Trello. These are sort of online card sorting tools. Miro would work quite well, I actually think. You could go in there, you just pull up a general board, and you can start writing on stickies. Boom, 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 and they pop up on the board, and you just type them in. Now, I basically said in that lecture with the interview, oh, yeah, you're going to produce out of this user stories. Well, that was a gross simplification, in fact. So what I really want to stress, in fact, is about this thing. It's about important issues and things in the voice of the customer. You're largely going to get those sorts of things from the customer. You're going to get these issues, these problems. The customer might have an idea, might give you ideas for the product. They might even say, I want to be able to do this with the product. Now, you could write that down in the customer's voice, and that's often, I actually think that's preferred. But there is this huge thing in the Agile community where it has taken hold that the user story is to be written in this form. As a type of user, I want some goal so that some reason. And in fact, a lot of this, the so that, ends up disappearing. And people do point out that they're like, if you don't have the so that, if you can't write it, it means you probably don't understand what the customer's real problem is. And so they're really big on, you should remember to write the so that. Some people then say that you shouldn't end with a so that, you should start with a in order that, or in order to do something, then I want this other stuff, just to put it there so that people always remember to write it. Nevertheless, you can write things in this form, okay? But it's not about you must. There's a big misconception about user stories. They are not the replacement for writing very detailed user requirements or software requirement specifications, okay? In a software requirement specification, you write these very detailed requirements for what must be in the software product, how it must show up, what does the UI look like exactly, okay? You're never going to capture that in this little as a user thing. So don't even fret about it. Don't even fret about having to follow this format, okay? What you want to capture coming out of this interview, really the largest thing is all the important stuff that you got out of it, okay? And you want to break it up into these chunks on these cards. And you're really what you're doing is you're going to get details about the problem, okay? So let's talk about this more. And how are we going to go from the problem to an actual solution? How are we going to get there? So, yeah, so most of what you're going to do are details about the problem. So I think it's important to note that user stories, as they're called, and some I'm going to have, as part of this week's material, to watch a lecture by Jeff Padden, who's written an entire book about user story mapping. I think he might be the inventor of user story mapping. And he's got this, he talks a lot about user stories. And I'm not going to try to repeat everything that he does. I'm just going to give you a small introduction to some of this stuff and give some context. He's going to talk more about user stories. And then there's some required reading we're going to do about user story mapping, and we're going to practice it in class. We'll practice it in class in the third week of class. Anyway, so user stories, though, user stories, the big thing, these things are conversation starters or reminders about design work. Okay, not the design work that you've done. And these are for product ideas and features. So it's really common to talk about things in terms of features, but you could also think of it as, oh, I got this great idea for a product. And you could put it in the form of, well, as a user, I want to be able to do this so that I can, achieve some goal. So they're conversation starters before we've begun all of our design work. They are reminders. So we start the conversation, we go out and we do lots of design work, and we as a team, we work and we figure out what is it that we really mean by this product idea or this feature. How could we actually build it? What would it look like? How would we use it? And there's lots of work there. And then we still have this story. This story then can be a placeholder, and we can put it in all sorts of tools to help us remember all the other design work that we did, all the other conversations that we've had, all of this shared understanding that we've gained. It's not about writing really great detailed user stories. So that's not the idea of it. The idea is, this is just sort of you could think of it, if you were thinking about it, it's a reference, it's a reminder of the bigger conversation, the much, much, much larger amount of work that we've done to actually figure out what it is that we want, what it is that the customer wants, or what's our idea for solving this problem. And so let's actually break this down a little bit. So, and let me show you the flow that we're going to go through to get to this solution. So again, we're going to start with this interview. And out of the interview comes a whole bunch of notes and the customer's voice. These are quotes that you have with the customer. And these are all, for the most part, they're about the problem. So the customer is telling you about what's wrong, what they need a solution to, things that take too long, things they don't like, all sorts of stuff. What's their problem? What do they need to actually have solved? They might, have some ideas for a solution, but you have to be careful. Usually, a customer's ideas for a solution might actually be stuck on sort of a suboptimal thing. They don't know what the technology is. They're not a team of highly creative individuals like you are. So, and they're stuck within their own world. You're going to come in it from another angle, another perspective, and you might see solutions that they are unaware of, and you need to keep that in mind. So next, after this, the team goes, and basically, again, we've said the team collects and then produces a clean set of, we could say that these are quotes and ideas, things all about the problem. Okay, so in other words, a whole bunch of individuals produce all of this stuff, the team meets, all right, this is what we think are all the important pieces of information that we got out of the interview. All right, then the team takes all of this, and now the team starts talking so the talking started here to clean things up, but lots of talking about how to solve the problem. Okay. The goal here is lots of ideas. And the other thing that often teams are going to need to be doing at this phase is, oh, I got this idea, and it might look like this. So lots of drawings. And these could be what I think the user interface is going to look like. They could be a drawing that goes, oh, they're going to be on a page like this, and then they're going to go to here, and they're going to do this, and then they're going to go here, and they're going to do this. It could be, oh, I think if we produce, the customer needs some sort of understanding and analytics. So if we produce a visualization that looks like this, that shows this, this would be great. You don't have no idea how to actually make the visualization yet, but you know that if it looked like that and showed some data like this, that could make the customer's understanding really great. And that could be solving the problem. There's tons of things that this is all about brainstorming, coming up. This is where the creativity of the design phase of software starts. All right. Now, from this sort of thing, you've got lots of ideas here. This continues. That's all. You're starting to plan and think things through based upon what you know to be the problem. And now, really, from that, this is when the team produces basically ideas, product ideas, feature ideas, ways to do this. Those are really what we want to talk about and call as user stories. These are the features of the products that describe the features or the ideas they think will solve the client's problem. Or be part of a solution. So you got a whole pile of these things. And some of them might be really related to each other. Some, you might have two different versions, all sorts of different things in your mind at this stage. And in fact, there's a lot of stuff there. And now the thing is, you need help actually organizing this. You need to sort of turn it into a bigger story, the overall product story that you can communicate back to the customer to go, now we heard your problem. And these are all the things, and this is the way it's going to work, that we think it's actually going to be a good solution to your problem. We think if we could build this, something that's got these ideas in it, that could get to solving your problem. And so from this, you go and you organize them. So you organize the stories into a flow, or you could call it a skeleton, something like that, of ideas, features, stories, whatever we want to. And the idea really is that, you could be able to tell a story. So let's say you were writing your stories down on little cards, and you had a whole bunch of cards. And the idea would be that going from left to right, reading left to right, you'd be able to go to a client and go, well, first, this would happen. The user would be able to do this. And then they would be able to go into the system and do this. And then they'd be able to go do this and this. And you might even have different types of users. And so that's just the basic user. And then you might have another set, which, this is as an administrator of the system, the administrator would be able to do this sort of stuff. All right. And so this is a real basic, it's a linear flow, some sort of thing broken up by major types of users that are going to be in the system, describing the basic system. And these are really fairly high level ideas and stories. These are really the big things that you think that came out of of what you have here. So this is part of what we call user story mapping. This is a key part of it. Then, as part of, it's still part of the user story mapping, but you do this important other step, which is to break your features down into the details of them. And usually the idea here is you're going to break them into smaller stories. This is also called story splitting. Okay, but it could just be the details. And then finally, the last step that you really do is you take all of that and you slice the small stories into iterations. And you refactor and you change the stories, or you rewrite the stories so that you can actually produce them in a series of iterations. Now, this is you're going to go from this interview to stuff that you've captured about the problem to, oh yeah, we're going to start coming up, we're going to clean that all up. Then we're going to figure out we're going to start talking about how to actually solve the problem. What are our ideas for solving the problem? And then we're going to work to organize those ideas and actually basically then come up with some sort of iterative release plan that we can actually work towards as a team, so that we build this product not in one gigantic fell swoop, but that we work to it in the Scrum or Agile sense, sprint after sprint after sprint. We do it iteratively with a goal then, again, because we know we still will probably not do things the way the customer wants, but the idea would be we show them a part of working software, we get feedback, and as we go through and we do iteration after iteration, it gets better and better and better. It's always supposed to be of value to the customer, and we're going to talk more about what we mean by this as we go along. But let me give you a little bit of an example here, what I mean about these user stories and so forth. All right, so imagine we've got, so this is, let's say, a user story example. All right. And one of the big pieces of software projects that I've been involved in as a client has been, we in the management science department, we need to, every single term, we need to assign teaching assistants to courses. And we want to do good matching. We want to assign the TAs the instructors want to a course, and we want to get the TAs the courses they want to TA. We want this mutually beneficial match, while at the same time, we've got to have enough TAs for every single course. So if we have tons of people who would be great for one course and they all want to do that course, well, they can't all do it. We have to find some solution to this problem across all the courses, and it's actually a lot of work to do this. So I've worked with student teams to build software to help doing this problem. Now, in the early conversations about this product, I'm sure one of the things I probably said is, I might have said, and they might have written down a quote where I said, one problem we have are duplicate applications. And this was true of the system before any student worked to improve the software. So they came and they interviewed me, and one of the things I'm sure I said was, yeah, we've got these duplicate applications. And I would explain how it is actually happening. And of course, it's a huge problem because which application am I supposed to use? I have to spend all this time to clean up the data and so forth and so on. Now, I think it's much more important out of that interview for someone to have written down, one problem we have are duplicate applications. And they might make all the notes then, all the context around what it is, why is this a problem, what are the details of the problem, how does it exist, so that they get some background. But this is the key little thing that might end up on a sticky note. Okay, this is not as a user, I want something so that something. This is a problem. This very common user story format, that's about the product idea, that's about the feature. I, as a user, am not actually giving the client here the solution. They don't have a traditional user story yet. User stories are for product ideas and features. So coming out of this interview, you're going to get a lot of problems. You're not necessarily going to get the user stories. And I didn't want to confuse you, as I may have with the previous lecture, but I just want to be very clear about that. So you've got this thing. Now, as a team, you could see all sorts of people come up with ideas. And now we could put these in sort of user stories. So you might have someone who has, we'll call this idea 1, and they go, oh, I think what we should do is, as an admin, because this is who I was, I'm an administrator of this process, I need a way to delete and remove duplicate, not delete and remove, that's the same thing. It's find and remove duplicate applications. Duplicate applications, okay? So that I don't waste my time and go insane. Well, I'm going to leave off the so that at the moment. Oh, someone else though, they're having a discussion thinking, well, wait a minute. Wouldn't it be cool if no, let's take it from the perspective of the student TA who's applying. We could solve the problem this way. As a user, I should not be able to submit duplicate applications. So, as a user, we're going to have some way so that I'm just stopped. You've already submitted an application. You're not allowed to submit another one. And someone else goes, oh, no. I think the way that we should do this idea is more like this. As a user, I can create and edit only one application per term, because we do this on a term-by-term basis. And so you can see here from one problem statement, where the customer is just like, this duplicate application stuff's got to stop. The team can start producing all sorts of ideas. And they may not sit around producing them in user story format, but they could be talking and having all sorts of discussions and conversations about, like, how are we going to solve the duplicate application problem? We could make it easier once they show up to find and get rid of them. Because if you could find them really quickly and delete them, who cares if they actually show up? Same way here, let's just prevent it at the get-go. But wait a minute, that doesn't seem to make the teaching assistants very happy, because maybe they need to edit and change their application, and maybe that's why they keep submitting duplicate ones. Oh, okay. You could keep going on and on and on. You could talk with a client. Oh, we got this idea, we got that idea, this idea. Some are going to take us more time to implement than others, but you've got to start producing these ideas. You're not going to get out of the interview a beautiful set of, the functionality must be this. That's not software design. That's not engineering. Usually the thing is, here's the problem, and I don't really know how to solve it. I think we might be able to do something. You should be able to do something like this. Do you think you could do this for us? And they might, and so the user might give you ideas. Those might not be the best ideas. Your job is going to be creating ideas. Let me give you another one that's just a high level. I'm not going to show it with lots of ideas, but and I want to talk about it a little bit. Um, you know, it might be, you might actually get a quote might have gotten a quote out of me that was something like, "It is very time consuming to assign TAs to courses trying to make both TA and instructors happy." And this one, it's so high level, you might just simply turn it in, yeah, I'm just going to turn this straight up into a user story that's like, as an associate chair, I want a tool to help me make matches or to make assignments or whatever, so that to do it quickly and I can make TAs and instructors happy. You could just take this quote, rearrange it, because we're trying to do this sort of thing. Reason it's time consuming, I just need something to help me do it. But there's nothing else there right now. Like, it's like, there's no idea. But you could turn it into a user story. Basically, I want this thing that does this stuff. Now, that as a user story, I'm not going to bother to write it for you, but that as a user story is huge. That's gigantic. Now, it might actually be a part of what you're going to do when we get to user story mapping. Okay, so you could already have started with your team having lots of conversations about how are we going to help this person do this matching between TAs and jobs, between TAs and courses and things like that. And you could have all sorts of ideas. And also there's other parts to the system as well. And so let's say you've got your stories. There's something about submitting the application here. There has to be review of applications. You would learn this in talking to me, that the department needs to review them to determine whether or not the student's allowed to work or not. So if the student's not allowed to work, they can't continue. So that might be next in the process. Then we could have this whole matching. So we need to assign the TAs to the courses. And then finally, there's some act of publish all the results to everyone. And this is highly simplified at the moment, okay? But you can see, we could start to work to create this thing where we've got sort of big feature areas or big feature ideas in a row. And this is what I was saying is sort of the main flow, or sort of the skeleton, the backbone of the application. This is a very simplified notion. So from this, though, okay, we'll draw a line just to make it clear that then underneath it, there can be all sorts of other, we can call them stories, or you can call them, these are the details, these are the subparts of actually getting this thing, this larger story done. Some people will call this big story an epic, okay? And so basically, there's no way we would just do an epic. There's all sorts of other parts to it to actually make submission of the application true. And if you think about it, submitting an application, it could just even be, there could be a part that's like, application can, as a user, I'm not allowed to submit an invalid email address. You could break that out as a detail, a part of submitting an application. So we're going to have these details underneath there, and there's going to be all sorts of things. Now, let's think about this matching. One of the things that we want to do is we want to end up with, so these are the big parts of the product that we're going to build, and we're going to come up with all these details underneath it. And what we really want to do is we want to be able to rearrange these details underneath here so that we create what are known as slices in our user story map. Okay, and so this is basically, iteration 1, iteration 2, and so forth and so on. Now you might also, initially, when you first working with the user story maps, you might not actually be thinking in terms of iterations. You might be thinking in terms of, this is must have, this is good to have, and this is nice to have. So you might first prioritize stuff at these levels, and then the reality is when it comes to MSci 342, you're only in the 8 weeks that you have, the 4 sprints to build anything, you're only going to be able to build a must-have. Okay, you're only going to be able to do this. What you would usually do then is you might very well say goodbye to all of this stuff. You might show this to the customer to show, look, I understand your problem and this could be a beautiful solution. We probably are only going to have time for must-haves. But the reality with the must-haves is you're not going to deliver them in one iteration. It's not like in 2 weeks, boom, you're done with all your work. It's going to take you the whole term to get all that done. So the must-have really is going to then get expanded. You're going to get rid of the good to have and nice to haves, and then you're going to redo the must-haves so that you have iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3, and iteration 4. There's going to be 4 sprints. You could call them sprint 1 through sprint 4. And what the idea here is to take these ideas that you have for stories, and you want to find a way that you're like, there's some version of it that I can deliver in iteration 1. Or maybe I'm going to do something for matching in iteration 1. And in fact, you're going to talk with the customer and say, well, let's work on this part of the problem because these parts of the problems you already have a pretty good solution for. So we'll just take the output of your existing and we'll start to work here, okay? We won't even deal with these yet. If we get time before the end of the term, maybe we'll get to them in the later iterations. But then, you could have things here and things here. Now, what is it that you should be putting into each of these iterations? The biggest mistake people make is they put one part of a solution here, but it's not a complete solution. And then they're like, oh, and then we'll do the next part here, and then the next part here, and then in the final iteration, we'll plug in the last piece, and we'll have matching solved for you. And that is not an iterative approach. That's just slowly working on 8 weeks worth of work, and eventually having one thing out of 8 weeks worth of work. No, iterative work is much more along the lines of the following. So if we were to take matching, you could envision a solution where people might actually do something like this. So let's say we have matching, and we talk about the first sprint or something, and you might actually say, oh, in this first sprint, what we're going to do is we're going to load TA preferences and instructor preferences because you already get these already exist from the prior software. So that's easy to get. Instructor preferences into Excel. And you're going to do matching via a heuristic, a real simple heuristic, okay? Now, the truth of the matter is you might do this. You might not actually get it done in one iteration. This might be really too much for one iteration, but let's just play around with this idea. Oh, so you're going to do heuristics. And then the person using the software could actually use it if you got it to work. And they might actually tell you, oh, what I really want to see is it to change like this, this, and this. And maybe that's what then you go do in the next iteration. And your previous plans for next iteration are changed. Because again, you're getting this feedback from the customer. But let's just say you get to stick to your plan. Well, the next thing you're going to do, maybe you keep all of that software, but you work to replace the matching algorithm is replaced with a solver. Okay. And then maybe the third step is allows hand edits. Hand edits of solution and resolves and can adjust, and resolves. So it solves the solution again, resolves, and can adjust to the new constraints. These are the hand constraints added in, And in fact, I will tell you that the truth of the matter is that no, these were not really sprints that happened for this product. What really happened was more like the first year the students worked on the product, they achieved this. Okay. The second year they worked on it, they didn't even achieve that, and it was a total bust, and we had to throw away with the work on it. And then the next time, it was a fourth year design project, and they achieved this matching algorithm replaced with a solver, and they solved all the whole other chain with solutions. So we ended up with a complete system that people apply, we largely avoid duplicates, we get to review, we get to match, we get to output. It was a pretty big solution. But as far as the matching algorithm goes, this itself was a substantial amount of work in 1 year by a team. They did some other stuff as well to get better data into this, email. So there's all sorts of ways to break up work. But the point I'm really trying to get at here is this is useful as it is. But you can see that we can then improve it and have something more useful. And then we can improve it and have something more useful. The idea is not to start with this solution and be like, oh, I built a user interface that allows hand edits. But the person goes, but does it help me assign anything? They're like, oh, no, that'll come later. And the truth of the matter is usually when you take it in that way, you don't really, it's usually a route to failure. And basically what you're doing is you're going back to an old style, non-iterative notion of development, and you're just giving progress reports. We're slowly getting there, please wait. Eventually you're going to get the product you want. And that's not what we're aiming for here. We want to end up with a way to produce these this work in an iterative fashion. All right. Another example that we could give you about this sort of thing is you could imagine, let's say we have an issue of, we'll switch over to a car, and you hear from the customer that the car needs seating in it. Of course it does, but just bear with me. And you could go, oh, in our first iteration, we'll give you, a board to sit on. A board of wood, basically, to sit on. Look, it's not a great solution, but you can sit on it. It is a seat, and we got it done. Oh, okay. And you might get the feedback that tells you it's really not that comfortable. Oh, okay. And then so you produce a padded seat. You upholster the board. Hey, pretty good, eh? You go, oh, well, but I really would like some back support. Oh, okay. And eventually, after enough iterations, you end up with a beautiful bucket seat. But at every step of the development, when you go back to the customer, they have something that can do the job, and it just gets better. What you don't do is you don't show up at the first one and go, this is the leather we plan to wrap the chair in. And we're still working on selecting the appropriate padding. And they're like, can I sit in it? No, there's a lot of work here to do. And the next time you go, oh, yeah, we've been bringing people in and we're working on the springs and the reclining mechanism. Well, do I have a seat yet? No, we're still working on it. That's not what we're going to do in this course, and that's not the way Agile software development works. This is the way Agile software works, which is we get you something that works, and then we keep making it better and better and better, okay? Based upon the user's feedback, and in this process, we really make sure that we're actually solving the problem that they have.